Good morning, Truth United Ministries. Welcome to our first Sunday online. I'm glad you are with us, watching us, and I hope that you enjoy this. This week, for the first time, we've had to shut the doors because of circumstances going on in the world. Circumstances that my parents didn't have to deal with, and my parents' parents didn't have to deal with. So this is new for all of us on how to deal with situations like the ones that we're presently going through. So we need to look to God, and we need to look at His direction on how to deal with situations like this. So I kind of want to take you this morning to Daniel, and I want us to look at two situations that happened in Daniel's time, and see how people reacted to things that were going on. And maybe there's something that we can take from that and apply that into today's situations. I want to start with two stories that we have all learned in Sunday school, and that is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel in the lion's den. And we're going to start with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And if you remember in Sunday school, when you first probably heard this story, Shadrach, Meshach, and King Nebuchadnezzar had built a gold statue, and he proclaimed that at the sound of musical instruments, everybody had to bow down to this gold statue. And so some of his people went back to King Nebuchadnezzar and said, "These people aren't bowing down to your gold statue when the music is played." And so King Nebuchadnezzar calls Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego before him, and he says, "Is it true that you are not bowing down when you hear the music?" He's like, "I'm going to give you one more chance to bow down." And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, "We don't have to defend ourselves." And I actually want to read the verse that it says. It says, "If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue that you have set up. Even if he doesn't save us, we're still not going to bow down to your gold statue because we serve our God." And so that angers Nebuchadnezzar. That angers him a lot. And he orders that the furnace is raised up 7 times hotter than ever before. And because of that, he has to take his best men when he ties up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to put them into the fire. And those men ultimately die because of how hot the fire is. So Nebuchadnezzar is watching all this go down. And in verse 24, it says, he yells out, "Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace?" "Yes, your majesty, we certainly did," they replied. "Look," Nebuchadnezzar said, "I see 4 men unbound walking around in the fire unharmed." Now, he threw 3 people in, but 4 people are standing there. And so all of a sudden he orders, and he says the 4th person looks like a god. And so he orders them to be taken out of the fire. And when they're taken out of the fire, not even a hair on their head had been singed. And Nebuchadnezzar sees this and he goes, "Your God is the God who needs to be worshipped." And he proclaims the God of Israel, the God of Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham, the God to be worshipped. And that's the first story I want you to see. And I'm going to connect all this with you in a second. But I want you to take you to Daniel in the lion's den. And we know Daniel in the lion's den, and we've heard that story before. Again, this time it's King Darius. It's not King Nebuchadnezzar, it's King Darius. And King Darius actually likes Daniel, and he has him as a ruler over one of his provinces. And he's really fond of Daniel. And he gets tricked into creating a law that's going to say that for 30 days you can only pray to King Darius. And it was the other leaders who did this, who got the king to make this law. And so he makes the law, and they come to the king and they say, King, you remember the law you created? He goes, yes, it can't be changed. The law is the law. He goes, well, your boy Daniel, he isn't following that. And so King Denarius tries everything he possibly can to get around the law he created because he loved Daniel. But at the end of the day, he couldn't come around the law. The law was the law. And so he's forced to put Daniel in the lion's den. And he puts Daniel in the lion's den, and he even says to Daniel, he says, may the God whom you serve save you. And so he couldn't sleep that night. He rushes to the den the next morning. And when he gets there in verse 21, he goes, Daniel, has your God saved you? And Daniel's response is, long live the king. My God sent an angel to shut the lions' mouth so that they would not hurt me. For I have been found innocent in his sight, and I have not wronged you, your majesty. The king was overjoyed, and he again proclaims Daniel's God to be the God that should be worshipped, and not him. So, two things. How does this apply to what we're currently going through? You know, what we are presented with is something that is fearful to us. See, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel had two things that was fearful. A furnace that would kill them, and a lion's den that would definitely kill them. They had something to be fearful of. And so they were presented with the opportunity to do what everybody else was doing or face this fear. And they chose to stand up for God. And I know today it's not a God or not God thing, but there's still that element of fear that I want you to look at. You know, you're presented with the fear of, we can handle this in two ways. We can either handle this with God or we can handle this without God. And I think there's a way that we can go through this new procedures, these new way of having to live, and we can bring God with us. And that's the main part, is that we don't get caught up in the fear and stop serving God. So and I love the statement, even if God does not save us, we are still going to serve God. And the thing that I know that you've probably heard all over the internet is that, and everybody talks about, it's like, oh, you got to believe, you got to have faith in God, you got to have faith in God. God is bigger than everything else going on, and that's all true. But the one thing I want you to see with both of these stories is, A, that with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, 3 people went in the furnace, but there was 4 people there. See? And with Daniel, he says, God sent his angel to shut the mouth of the lions. See, Daniel wasn't alone. See, it's not this faith that it's all on us to do everything. See, God is going to be present with you as you go through this. God isn't a God saying, have faith and I'm absent. God is a God who's saying, have faith and I will be there with you. And see, that's the thing I want you to hold on to. And that's the thing I want you to realize about taking God with you. Because God's not going to say, go through and do what I'm telling, proclaim, be peaceful, follow the laws, follow my commandments, use this time to build a relationship with me, and he's going to be there through the process with you. He's going to be there standing with you in the fire. He's going to be there in the lion's den with you. He's not just going to leave you. And what is the ultimate thing that comes out of both of these stories? Is that God is ultimately seen as the God who is the ultimate right God. That all these